Brew! Gotcha. Scared you. Scared you.
Welcome to Pulp Mortem. My name is Jake, and this is the last week of Sci-Fi Horror Month. Do we end things with a bang or on a whimper? It's a whimper. But first, a little bit about the author. Unfortunately, Karl Mannheim is an undisclosed pseudonym. Though he/she shared a name with the famous sociologist, he didn't write this. He wouldn't write this. I wish I could tell you more, but this particular pen name was only used twice. When the Earth Died and Vampires of Venus, both in 1950 by World Distributors. I own the 1973 5-star paperback edition. It is 128 pages and originally cost £0.25. At least I think that's what this means. Help me out, UK friends. The cover is absolutely driving me crazy because I've seen this image before. I want to say the original was a Podwill, but I'm not sure. The colors have been washed out and new colors have been added, at least I think. I mean, help me out, you guys. Does anybody recognize this image? Ugh, it's driving me crazy.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
This book shares a title with a more popular story by Anthony Pelcher. And when you Google Vampires of Venus, for whatever reason, they think you actually want virgin vampires from Venus or vampire vixens from Venus. It's dumb, but I mean, I don't know, maybe you do want those instead. This is kind of hard to find online, but after some digging, I was able to find 1 or 2 copies for around $10. The story opens with the brother and sister, Plato and Helen, mid-journey. Their parents have just died, leaving them the only 2 humans alive in the entire northern hemisphere of Venus. The flameless fire, which is a superheated band around the equator of the planet, bars their way. Not wanting to succumb to Blue Lagoon syndrome, they must pass through this if they have any hope of propagating the human race. They are riding Krebs, which are these friends, and they are these intelligent, gray, furry, flying creatures that worship the sibling as gods. They make it through the flameless fire, just barely make it through this heat, and to their delight discover another race of Krebs, but these southern ones are more advanced. They are taken to the king of the southern Krebs, and at the same time, to their surprise, they also meet another human. The hunky Prince Zlanty is an ambassador from Mars, and he has only just arrived as well. Things are looking up for our 2 Venusian siblings. That is until a horde of horrifying, giant, red, bird-like creatures suddenly attack. These vampires begin ravaging the peaceful Krebs, sucking the blood from their bodies and leaving hundreds dead. Unfortunately, the Krebs are pacifists. They are unable to defend themselves from this deadly threat. So they turn to Plato. The young man would help them, but unfortunately he needs the help of Prince Zlanty, despite the sonic warnings that Plato's experiencing that tell him that the Martian prince may have some ulterior motives in visiting Venus. Will Plato succeed in stopping this horde of Venusian vampires? Will Zlanty save the human race or usher in an interstellar war? Will Helen develop a personality? Will 5-star publishing succeed in preventing you from finishing this book? Let's find out together. The world of Venus here is imaginative and fun. It's 10% land, 90% shallow water with a thick cloud layer that they call the sky roof. The heat belt was interesting, as was the vampire island, which had radiation so thick that it was visible and glittering. This really does harken back to an earlier time in science fiction when the stars were viewed with childlike wonder and imagination was allowed to run free and play. Which brings us to... Officially, this was printed in 1950, but it reads older. It reads much older. In fact, this reads like a Burroughs, or a DeCamp, or a Pratt, or a Milne Farley, you know, that era. And since we don't know who wrote this, it actually could be much older. It honestly could be a 20s or 30s pulp story renamed and reprinted overseas with a brand new pseudonym. Of course, this is all speculation, and this book is so obscure that I would be surprised if its author and true origin were ever uncovered. But, I mean, it's fun to speculate. And now, the bad. This book is loaded with punctuation and spelling errors. But, I mean, do you blame the author or the editor? How about both? The writing in this is dated, which is fine, and honestly, I don't mind that at all. But what is not fine is it's also unskilled. It's overly simplistic. It's kind of dull. It's the type of rushed, common, and amateur writing that gave the pulps a bad name. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this can kind of be charming sometimes, especially with this old stuff, but in the case of VOV here, it was just irritating. We aren't really told the size of the cribs. Now, obviously they're large enough to carry a human being on their back while they fly, but then Plato can pick one up and carry it around as well? Maybe their size was described in the first book, which chronicles Plato and Helen's parents when they first arrived at Venus after fleeing Earth. I mean, that's just a guess. I kind of doubt it, though. The morality espoused in this book is constantly shifting, and not in a good or purposeful way. It's not like things are gray and we're exploring the nuance. No, our hero Plato flip-flops 3 times. Now, I say Plato flip-flops, but in truth, it's the author who doesn't know what to think. Unfortunately, this is very common in amateur writers. They're writing their story, and then when they get to the point where they're writing from the point of view of their antagonist, all of a sudden they're placed in another mindset and suddenly they don't know what to think. And you can tell when they are working through this new world view while writing. To clarify, I am all for a sympathetic villain, but that is not what we got in here. For example, if the villain is invading your planet with intention on murdering you, raping your sister, creating nuclear bombs, sucking all the natural resources from this world, and enslaving the indigenous race, guess what? This is not a sympathetic villain. We don't need to ask, are we doing the right thing in stopping him? We do not need to consider his side of things. If monstrous blood-sucking birds are suddenly wiping everything out, guess what? We don't need to pontificate the morality of exterminating these monsters. Now, that is not to say that all stories need to be in black and white. Far from it. There's a reason why some of the best villains are sympathetic villains, and anti-heroes will always have an allure. The real world has complexity, and it can be very interesting to explore the space between. But when an author comes across as unsure, almost like he's asking the reader what they think he should think, listen, bud, you're already asking me to spend my time, the most precious resource we have, on reading your words, and yeah, sorry, you don't get to ask for more. Sometimes we don't get spaces between words. This occurred at random. I don't know why. It's not like the characters are talking fast or anything. It's just... what? And my final knock against this book is 5-star publishing. I must confess, despite my overall dissatisfaction/boredom with this book, I was interested at the ending. The climax had my attention, and I was eager to find out what was going to happen. And then this happened. After this initial jarring fourth wall break, every other page was an ad for 5-star paperback books. Every other page! For those of you who don't know, in the publishing world, this technique is known as stupid.
Hey, when is the typical reader most engrossed in the story?
Oh, that's easy. The dramatic climax.
Oh, nice. Okay. Cram that section full of ads.
Now, this is stupid for 2 reasons. The first is that this disrupts the flow of the story. The reader is immediately ejected from immersion, and good luck getting back in because 30 seconds later, there's going to be another ad. And 2, because the reader was immersed and sucked out of it, they will instantly be annoyed and filled with disdain and angrily flip past this without reading it. Let me tell you a fact. Nobody has read these ads. Nobody. We have angrily flipped past them so we could continue reading the story. These are not advertisements. These are hindrances. And I promise you, not a single person on Earth has read those ads. Now, maybe in the history of science fiction, 1 or 2 people went back and read through those ads. But even if that's the case, if they find a book that they're interested in, they're not going to order a 5-star edition. They're going to see if Daw or Ace carries it because, they put their advertisements at the end of the story. Like decent people. Well, is there fun on Venus? Yeah, there's a little bit of fun. The Martian spaceships run on gold. I couldn't say that with a straight face. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that. That's a new one for me. There's got to be cheaper ways to fuel a spaceship.
Insert price of gasoline joke here.
Prince Zelante is my favorite character, not just because he's goofy looking. I mean, he's red, and because of the thin atmosphere on Mars, his nostrils and his chest are greatly expanded and large. Also, his ears are super large too, but that one didn't make any sense. But what I love about him is he is constantly laughing, boisterously laughing. Every time he is introduced, even in conversation, he's laughing constantly. He walks into a room, laughing. If he's doing something, anything, he is laughing. Every time he starts to say something or responds, it begins with a belly laugh. His response to everything is a preposterous laugh. Listen, how do you know somebody's the villain of the story? When they're having more fun than everybody else. So what's the verdict? Thrift Shop. This might be the most forgettable book I've read all year, but nothing was too offensive and there's no reason to hate this, except for 5-star publishing. But was this scary? Whip out those PKE meters one last time and let's find out. 0 chills, 0 thrills, and say it with me. Boo! Vampires were just big stupid birds. And that is my review. And that's my review of
Frozen pudding on a stick. You know, Jello pudding.
Stupid ads. We're trying to end.
You will be entered to win an all-expenses-paid trip.
Let us know in the comments. Have you read this before? Or maybe is there another space vampire book we should have read instead? And don't say Vampire Vixens of Venus.
Now you're hot.
As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time with Blueface.
What are you wearing, Jake from
Paul Morum?
Khakis.